I'm situated in a very significant place in Sydney, Australia. It's the birthplace of Christianity, really, because near the Quay was the first service in Australia on the 3rd of February 1788, where Richard Johnson spoke from Psalm 116, verse 12, "What shall I render unto the Lord?" And also, this intersection of Castlereagh, Bligh and Hunter Streets is the place where the first church was built in Australia, and is also used and opened in 1793 for Christian schooling in Australia. So it is the first schooling in Australia which is Christian by the chaplains, Rev Richard Johnson, and others that continued on, like Rev Samuel Marsden.
Richard Johnson was born in Yorkshire, England in 1756 after graduating from college. He worked as a vicar for 1 year and then in London as an itinerant evangelical preacher. Because of his commitment and enthusiasm, he was recommended by the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel as chaplain for the prison colony of New South Wales. John Newton and William Wilberforce both persuaded England's Prime Minister, William Pitt, to accept Richard Johnson's nomination. He was duly appointed in 1786. Richard Johnson and his wife Mary would sail to Sydney on the First Fleet, which consisted of a fleet of 11 ships containing around 1,000 free settlers and convicts. He brought with him over 4,000 pieces of literature to the colony, including many Bibles, books of common prayer, hymn books, and numerous booklets. After a journey of over 8 months from England, Richard Johnson conducted the first Christian service on Australian soil on Sunday the 3rd of February 1788. Believing in God's providence and feeling blessed in a new beginning, the text he preached from was Psalm 116, verse 12. "What shall I render unto the Lord for all his benefits toward me?" Part of Richard Johnson's responsibilities as chaplain was the future education of the new colony. In his own words, he said the following: "It is from a long and ardent wish that the minds of the rising generation of this colony may be duly impressed with such moral and religious sentiment, that a plan has been adopted and rules and regulations made, which I hope every parent as well as others concerned in bringing up children will see it to be their duty and interest to promote. Schooling in the new colony was to be for all children, whether their parents were soldiers, settlers, native-born or convicts. Principles for the first Christian school in Australia in 1793 included a prayer to be read by the schoolmaster and one of Dr. Watt's hymns sung at the beginning and end of each school day, as well as children attending on Sunday for the catechism and singing a children's hymn. It was strongly recommended that parents send their children to school early to pray, as they were able, for a blessing for them to benefit from the day's instruction. Continuing encouragement, both financial and moral, was extended to the Australian church school movement by various British Christian societies and leading reformers such as Shaftesbury and Wilberforce. Wesleyan and Presbyterian support was available also to the school-founding missionaries of those denominations in Australia. The evangelical arm of the Church of England also sent missionaries like Rev Richard Johnson and Samuel Marsden to Australia. The majority of early Australian education then was initiated not by government legislation, but by the Christian Church. During these early years, those church-sponsored schools, which comprise the majority of institutions in Australia, were characterised by personally committed Christian staff, Bible-based curricula, and largely non-government control and funding. The Bible-based church-related school of early colonial times was remarkably successful in meeting the academic and spiritual and moral needs of the younger generation of that day. What was happening in Australia was only part of the great church-based day school movement, which developed in many democratic countries during the 17th and 18th centuries.